Goes.
Who? God,
God.
he wouldn't mind seeing you, Anne.
Oh, I don't want to see it. Go on my own. Look, I got to go everywhere on my own. So
What?
I must admit, I haven't been. I haven't been to the cinema on my own.
It was terrible last night. They were talking about bloody orgies, all sorts of bloody things. I couldn't tell them to shut up.
That's because they're, you know,
Hang on. Don't blame it on me. It was in the break time. They were talking about orgies, all sorts of bloody things.
oh, that's because it was on the telly, wasn't it? There was. Oh, it was. Oh, yes, it was him. The Eastern European artist. The big bloke. And he was doing pornography in Etna, Mount Etna, not a Mount Etna, you know,
Vesuvius.
Vesu.
Huh?
No,
Be a bit hot, mind.
Yeah, I think it would be, man.
it was you should watch it. It's just for you, Carl. It was really pornographic.
Orgies. Yeah.
Well, oh, oh,
What are we on about?
where's the volcano gone? Uh, where did the volcano cover up?
Santorini.
What? No, the one
Santorini.
we're doing, the one we're doing,
Mount St. Helens. Well, where?
the most popular one that everybody goes to near Rome.
Vesuvius.
Pompeii.
We've mentioned Vesuvius.
It is it?
Oh, for
Yes. All right. Pompeii, right. But he was
Near
at
Naples.
Pompeii, but he had loads of
You know what, right? I didn't appreciate it last night that Roger was talking about this prostitute he slept with when he was 18. It was just unacceptable.
It's Henry now.
I thought it was unacceptable. I didn't really my husband watched it. Not a flinch. He didn't flinch
No,
an eyelid.
no, I'm talking about in the class on Tuesday. Roger was
Oh.
talking about the prostitute he slept with when he was 18. I thought, and he was talking about it's disgusting. And then one of the women said that she went to Malaysia, right? And she met this bloke. And you don't want to know any more details.
Oh, it's probably the most exciting thing she's ever done.
Yeah, but you shouldn't be talking about these things in my classes on a Tuesday.
I know, but you see, you you just
Oh, and this new guy, he's talking away, right? He's only been with us a couple of weeks. He's saying, oh, one of the reasons why he likes Roman archaeology is because he likes the bondage. And I don't know where to look. I tell you what, I don't half attract some weird people in these classes.
well, it's a point of view, isn't it? I mean, why do you think we got all these gay people around, and
What the hell's that got to do with Roger
but
sleeping with
it's
a prostitute and then
acceptable.
suddenly talking? Oh, for God's sake, Anne.
Well, Roger, did you say Roger?
Yes,
Our Roger?
yes.
Oh, well, I think you're
He's
going to
got
have
a.
to
I tell you what, he's got a bit of a shady past, that boy.
working for the gas board.
Right, okay, guys. Right, any news from you,
Yeah,
Anne? Anne, I gotta get started, okay? Let's just get on
yeah,
with
I'm
it.
here. I'm here. Tenant's here and all.
Yeah, I'm asking you, is there any news?
Well, only that that program last night was a bit risque. And he isn't like he takes us. It's his archaeology really because it's very old art. And
Do you remember? Do you,
then
do
he
you remember,
came into
sister?
the modern art. But apart from that, yes, I mean there was the program about yeah.
Right, and have you finished now, love?
My memory's going. I can't
Yeah, thank God
remember.
for that.
But Alice Roberts, that's right. Alice Roberts did do a good program the other day, and
Yeah.
seemed to be connected to the Iceni and Boadicea, and I think that was the right program. And
Oh, for God's
and
sake,
and
just
really, like around Harold's time.
what the hell's Boadicea got to do with King Harold?
Oh, it was around 1000. It was
It wasn't. Boadicea was AD 60.
It
King
was
Harold, right?
yeah, but it was the
reincarnated.
same
Was
area. It was the
1810,
same. It was the same area of the country.
1066. You can't make this up.
I know it was very confusing, but
I'm confused.
I thought it was the same area of the country.
Yeah,
And the flats. It was people wanted that land because it was flat and it was productive.
yeah.
I never mind about the bogs and things. I mean, but we've done all that, haven't we? We've done all that.
What, the bugs?
Yeah. So that's it. There's Pat.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah,
What are you going to do today? What are you going to do today?
I haven't even been able to open my bloody mouth. Right, Richard.
No, nothing from me.
Right, okay. Well, at least that's helpful. Do you know what I mean? At least we don't have a diatribe about pornographic activities on TV and then it's slipping over to my classes on a Tuesday. Right, Pat.
No, nothing.
Well, it was on last night.
Like,
I don't know how they saw it.
No, what's happening? Look, I'm gonna have to turn this off in the break, right? Because the type of stuff they were talking about was so graphic, right? Roger sleeping with his prostitute. He was telling us all about it, right? And he went back for more, he said. It's disgusting.
Well, we don't need to know that. We're very good.
And I'm trying to tell you, that's what they were talking about.
Well, they're of a certain age, you see. They're older than me. They're of that age where they're liberated.
For God's sake, please.
They were the real hippies, the liberated ones.
Yeah.
I went to a convent.
And yeah, that's fine. I'm loving it. Yeah, good. Right. Oh God, nothing from you, Pat. No, that's all right. No.
And I lived at home when I was at art
Yeah,
college.
okay. I get it. It's a terrible childhood. Just get over it. Right. Henry, can you please just tell us something useful?
Yes, they've discovered that Boadicea had a time machine and she was able to contact Harold.
Oh, and also, right. This is a fact, right? William Shakespeare said this. This is a direct quote from William Shakespeare. He said, "Don't believe everything you read on the internet."
The answer to the question is no.
I
I have been out of the country, so
oh,
yeah. Well, that's fair enough. Yeah, at least you got over it. Right. Okay. Yeah. Fine. Yeah. We're gonna crack on. It's all good. So we've got a mix.
You're the only real sensible archaeologist on the telly at the moment.
What, me?
Yeah.
You know what? I'm watching Neil Oliver now and again, right? He's a bit controversial.
See, you've done it before. You see, he's only coming into it now. You've been a comedian ever since you started.
Yeah,
they're all
but
trying to develop their personalities, you see, so they can get more money.
yeah, cool. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah. Good. Yeah, I was going to say something about Neil Oliver. Then it was like I was talking a few days back about something, and the next thing a few days later it's on his show, and I'm thinking, He must watch my stuff. Right. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's. Well, he came on one day, didn't he? Oh yeah, that was one of the most embarrassing things I've ever witnessed. We had Neil Oliver coming on, right? I thought, oh, that's great, you know. And then Margaret on the Tuesday cast going, thinking, oh my bloody god!
You won't
He
get
did
Alice
Come
Roberts
on,
turning up.
calm down. Count to 10. One,
right.
two,
Enna Dio,
three,
three,
see.
quattro, pente. Yeah, we've done it. Right. Okay, good. Right. Okay. So let's just
Take a deep breath.
yeah, thanks, Anne. I really appreciate that. Yeah. Um oh yeah. All right. Yeah.
The wanted
I'm
poster.
what's that?
Is that the wanted poster?
Well, look at that there. Oh my God, look at that. Oh yeah, wow. Sorted. Yeah, that's the wanted poster, yeah. Right. So today, Anne, right? We're doing a we're doing a few little stories, right? And it starts off with this. And then these sort of things link. So
Oh,
yeah.
didn't we,
Oh
was that the ones they found in a ledge, in a lump of ledge?
no. This one's
Oh, God, that's what was on what's her name's
what
program.
what are you on about?
There was a lump of lead, and
Yeah, go on, tell us
inside
about the
it,
lump of lead, yeah. Yeah,
was all these coins, silver coins.
yeah.
Yeah, and they opened it up and looked at the coins, and they were all sort of, I think they were Iron Age, like just Iron Age,
Right. Yeah, go on.
and it was great. Fancy finding that in your field.
Yeah, it would help. I've my actual. Oh, there we go. I got it. Right, sorted. I thought I'd lost my notes on this one. So right, rather little interesting one. So we got to be very careful and sensitive as I'm reading out this one. Okay. So what we've got is a load of coins, and the interesting thing about these coins is that they're associated with a lost rebellion that, well, nobody talks about in regards to the Jews in Galilee.
Oh,
So these, interesting enough, right? These are actually from the last major Jewish uprising in 351 and 352,
oh,
not the one that we discussed a few weeks ago, and not the one that we talked about in regards to Hadrian. So as they're excavating this, so they've got these coins, and these coins were uncovered. They're all copper coins, bronze coins. These were uncovered in an underground tunnel network, which they believe was actually first used in the first major Jewish uprising, which took place just before 71 AD, because that's when the time that Masada was actually captured. Yeah.
where?
So,
Palestine?
well, Masada, yeah.
Oh,
So
right.
so so this is these are all associated with being found in Galilee, and they've and it was unusual that they found these because they looked at the dates on them, and they were roughly all around the time of about 351 and 352 AD. So it was the last major Jewish rebellion against the Roman state. And this is actually quite significant, really. So the complex of tunnels that they have been excavating, they thought they were going to find evidence of this sort of first major Jewish revolt, or the one that we refer to in regard to Masada before AD 71. But then there was another major Jewish revolt that we actually mentioned a few weeks ago in regards to Emperor Hadrian between 132 and AD 136. So they're looking at this trade, this network, and they're thinking, oh wow, they found these coins, but it turns out that these coins are actually from another uprising against the Roman state. So this is why they're sort of significant, and it's quite significant because they've been looking at this tunnel network for quite some time, and the main thing about it is that the Romans just didn't find this tunnel network after all the problems that they were having with the Jews. They just didn't find it. So it's really interesting that these have actually been found from another sort of moment in history. So I just want to share that with you, and that's just sort of been released now. So that's sort of an article of the week. However, the other thing that I've been doing recently is going through loads of paperwork. In fact, quite a lot of paperwork. And you know those moments that you've got to like chuck out letters and those types of things, and so I've got I've been going through a load of things, and I found another article which I've mentioned a few times. And when I was reading the article out last night, everybody was so amazed by what I was saying in this article. They wanted me to do a little bit more research on it. So this article dates from 2003, and it's directly related to an archaeologist that I used to work with years ago. And I cut this out of the newspaper back in the time from 2003, and it's to do with this little sort of pot. So there's a nice little story about this. Unfortunately, the images are not great. I've only got two. I've taken them off the newspaper. So this is a pot of beauty cream that was so airtight, right? And that the original fingerprints of the person who last used it were actually found in the cream in the top there, right? And again, apologies, the images are not really clear.
Oh, it's not bad though.
But and basically it was so airtight that it was almost as if when I opened it, it was. You mentioned one of you mentioned time. Oh, Henry mentioned time travel earlier on, but in many ways, when you find something like this and the cream is still intact inside, and you've got fingerprints, right, and you've got the original air that was sealed in this pot, nearly 1,900 years ago, right? That's time travel. Because it is time travel, because you're looking at somebody's fingerprints. You've got some of the original air that's just been dispersed, and it is time travel. I say that with lots of Roman coins, because you get these perfect mint gold Roman coins, and you look at them and the lettering's perfect and the emperor's busts on it perfect and so on. And you're thinking, oh my God, this was produced 1,800 years ago, and it's still as perfect as when it was made. So that's time travel as well. So because they haven't moved in time. That's the point I'm trying to make. So the article says that seal of quality, the pot was still airtight. And the interesting thing now, there's another thing about this story, right? They released this news the day after they'd found the object. Now, today, as you know, when I'm reading an article, it basically says, oh, they found this like 3 years ago, and now we're learning about it now. But back then in the 1980s, 20 years ago in 2003, they wanted people to know about this stuff. Yeah. So it was sealed shut and left as an offering to the gods back in the days when the Romans ruled Britain. Hence, there you go. So it's saying yesterday archaeologists gazed in awe as the pot was opened. It was opened from this site that they were excavating. So they released the news straight away. It was just out there, which I think is very interesting. Why we delay stuff these days? It's like waiting for years to learn about things when we've got the technology. 2003, they tell you about it there and then. It's amazing. So so it's the first time the pot had been opened in nearly, okay, it says 2,000 years, 1,900 years, and found in its still white contents the finger marks in its still, its, start again, still white contents, the finger marks of its original owner. Do you know what threw me then, right? This piece of paper in front of me, I used my finger and I scanned up along as if I was on a computer screen. Anyway, experts are astonished that the white cream, probably a beauty treatment for the hands or face, has been almost perfectly preserved from around the year AD 150. So the circular metal tin was found in the remains of a temple in Southwark, the south bank of the River Thames. It is thought to have been left as an offering to pagan deities. Now, or it could have just been lost. However, there's a point to be made here that we know lots of things are left at temples, because when the Mithras temple was excavated in the 1950s, particularly 1956, they found there were so many pottery lamps that they allowed members of the public to go home with them. There was tens of thousands of these pottery lamps found at the Temple of Mithras in London. So when they excavate these types of sites, there's loads of different things that they find, but they found this. So the Romans sought help from their gods for most of life's problems, and presents of money, pottery, statues of Lloyd George, jewelry, foodstuffs, and expensive oils, ointments were left in temples across the empire. It is believed the cream's original owner was a wealthy Roman woman, as it would have been an expensive luxury item. There's 2 points are made with this, and they're both really relevant. The first point is, presuming that it actually belonged to a woman is a bit dodgy, to be honest with you, because it could have equally have belonged to a man. However, the other point of this is that when they say an expensive luxury item, it's no difference than walking into Marks and Spencer's and looking at a cream that cost you £300. So when they make statements, this expensive luxury item, that's an expensive luxury item to buy cream in Marks and Spencer's costing 300 quid. So what I'm trying to do is make a parallel there, as if things were expensive then as they are today. Job done.
Yeah.
So it's sort of no more the point is no more expensive back then than it is now. That's what I'm trying to get at. So perhaps the person I hoped to have, if it was a woman, her beauty enhanced, or was asking the gods to cure a skin condition. And they said, listen to this, a pungent sulfurous smell was released as the pot was gently eased open. Inside, finger marks were smeared on the lid. Amazing, absolutely amazing. And the woman may have dabbed on the cream one last time before leaving the temple. Nothing like this has been found in Britain ever, right? And well, up until 2003 anyway. Nothing like this has been found in Britain. And the point is that there may have been hundreds of thousands of these objects wandering around Britain at one point, right? But this is the only one that we know of has survived, and it makes it even more important. So the pot lay buried for nearly 2,000 years. And one of the curators from the Museum of London at the time, Francis Grew, who said basically the pot's going to go on display. He's really excited. He said, "We're in absolute uncharted territory. It is a fabulous find, incredible. It's very, very rare to find a box complete with lid and contents. And I'm going to put this in there, still sealed, airtight." And the same guy said, "I can't think of any other examples from the rest of Roman Britain. There's going to be huge interest in this." And naturally, definitely. So he added, it is something that belonged to somebody who was wealthy, a wife, or it may have been a senator, whatever, but someone of wealth. Obviously, to afford something that expensive is something else, as it would be today. I know we've got the experience, haven't we, Richard? As you go into Marks and Spencer's with a lady friend, and it's like, oh, oh, I want to buy that cream there that costs 400 quid. And you're thinking, why? But it's the same experience today as it was then. So we have to wait for scientific analysis first. And they said last night we want to know more. So I'm going to bring that to you next week. But we do know Romans used ass's cream, which is basically made from ass's milk. Okay. Yeah. So Emperor Nero's wife Pompeia used to take baths in ass's milk, right? But used to use ass's cream for good measure. The exquisite cylindrical pin box that they're referring to it as, it's tiny, which is just 2 inches high. Well, actually, from where I'm looking at on the screen, that's probably about scale. And 2.5 inches in diameter. It's such good workmanship that the seal appears to have remained sound. Well, obviously it did. The fact that it was an expensive item hidden on a temple site makes the archaeologists believe it was an offering to the gods. And another reason why I kept this article, right? I'll tell you about it in a minute. But also in this article it says, living the good life in lively Londinium. And I want to read this little thing before we crack on. And I'll tell you the other reason why I kept this piece. So the narrow streets of Londinium teemed with people from all over Europe and beyond: Spain, France, Germany, Africa, Syria, and China. And I'm going to say that's not even in the article. I'm going to say that because I think they were excavating a little bit after this was found in 2003, and they found 3 bodies of gentlemen that their DNA was Chinese. So there you go. The only people that would
they might have had cream.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
So the only people you're not going to see in Britain at that stage is people from America. That's it. Everyone else is here. So nothing's changed really.
No.
The city busy with traders, soldiers, civil servants, nobles, and slaves. It was a riot of languages and exotic clothes, and the streets lined with cafes, taverns, and fast food takeaways. I always remember there was a Doctor Who episode with I think it was David Tennant was in it, and then oh no, it was David Tennant was in it, and I can remember that they had like this voice changing thing that they could speak Latin, so the assistant he had started speaking Welsh, and people were going, I don't understand that language. Anyway, you get the point if you understand that. So the rich had armies of slaves, large houses with underfloor heating, and fine wine from southern reaches of the empire. The food was basically Italian, although without tomatoes, pasta, potatoes, lots of the spices that they use today. The Romans ate a variety of meats, loved oysters from the Thames estuary, and used lots of olive oil. For the slaves, of course, it was a hard life, but archaeologists now believe most of the 20,000 strong population lived a reasonably good life, at least compared to what would come later. All social classes attended the contests at London's amphitheatre, which could seat 6,000. And actually, they only really started finding big chunks of the amphitheatre in London at the Guildhall in the 1980s. I remember that because I cut an article out the newspaper and I've still got that somewhere probably. There, as well as each other, the gladiators would face wild boars, bulls, wolves, bears, and even tigers. And the reason why I kept this was that the woman who was working with this lady, Elizabeth Barham, was a manager, Nancy Rosenberg. She's still about. She's still doing massive things in archaeology. She runs her own archaeological consultancy up north. But back then, she was part of another consultancy, E.C. Harris, which managed the excavation. And Nancy said back in the time, to find finger marks is so very extraordinary. We are literally touching hands with history. We're lucky in London to have a marshy site where the contents of this completely sealed box must have been preserved very quickly. The metal is hardly corroded at all. And they had excavated at the site at Tabard Square, Southwark, for a whole year. And there's more. The site contained the foundations of not one temple, but two temples and a mansio guest house. Other important discoveries included pottery, 3 plinths, which would have supported statues and remains of some of those statues, and leather shoes. And they also say that in 2002, the site had turned up a stone plaque, wait for it, with the first recorded use of the name Londinium. So in other words, it was the first carving that mentioned the city of Londinium in London. Isn't that amazing that they find that? And to be honest with you, Londinium is one of those. London is one of those sites that's got such a lot of Roman archaeology. I've every time I've gone down to London acting, I've tried to do my best to try and visit some of it with not a lot of success. But there's a lot of Roman archaeology in London. You've got 2 sets of Roman bathhouses. You've got several bits of Roman remains under sort of multi-story buildings, which you can actually go and see in the basement. You've got the London Stone. You've got loads of bits of City Wall. You've got the Temple of Mithras. There's loads in London to see. Now, I was going through my paperwork, and as I was just about to chuck this in the bin, I thought, hey, hang on a minute. I'm not chucking this in the bin. Look at that image. And when I was doing the one about Trajan's column, right, I couldn't really find an image like this because this is actually quite nice. It's really a nice image. It's actually a postcard, and this was sent to me quite some years ago. Actually, this was actually sent to me in 1997, and by Peter Pressford up north. He's actually still one of our only 2 remaining members from North Wales. But so the one point with this is that you look at it and you'll understand what I mean when I make this statement. What's left in Rome is between 5 and maybe 6 or 7% of what was Roman in Rome back in the day, right? And I've just made that point because when people go to Rome, they think, oh, there's loads of Roman stuff left in Rome, and there's not. There's only about 5%, and then the next image shows you something else, right, which we're going to go on to. But the next image will show you when then I compare with Roman era Britain, right? The level of what survived is not 5%, is something like 0.5%, right? So you get you get for example, you go to somewhere like Ratea, which is Leicester, and you see the massive Thermaea wall in Leicester, and you go, oh wow, that's brilliant. There's loads of remains in Leicester. No, there ain't. That's all there is. And a little bit of wall as well. That's all there really is. And you're thinking, oh right, so if that's all there is, then you get whole Roman cities in Britain that there's basically nothing left of them. For example, the Roman city which would have been Hereford, but it was a bit further out, I think, and near Kentchurch, and there's nothing there. There's no walls, there's nothing there, and you just think, right, okay, so even though we like to think that there's loads of Roman stuff out there to see, there's not a lot. And I made a really strong political statement last night, which I'm going to make now, right, because it's relevant to what I'm discussing, right? And there's this. When people say that we need to destroy archaeology because it's in the way, right? I'm gonna use some extreme words. That is an absolute load of crap, right? Because what they are now doing in places like London, look at this one, right? They've this is the church at Fenchurch, right? And it basically says All Hallows Staining Church is elevated on stilts during the bottoming out ceremony of the new 50 Fenchurch Street development in the City of London. So what they have done, they've kept it there. They've put it on stilts. They're going to build around it, and they're keeping the archaeology. Now that is an example of saving archaeology with no excuse. That there's grade one listed. If this was in Wales, right, it would have been demolished, right? Whether it's grade one, whether it's scheduled, 5 Mile Lane, and all the rest of it, it would have been demolished. But here's proof that we can actually physically save our history whilst we can modernize cities, and that is proof of it. You know, I don't need anyone to ever say that we need to destroy any archaeology now, because you can include it, and there is proof. An entire bloody church.
Yeah.
Well, amazing, isn't it? Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So I've made the point. I've made my political point tonight, and there we've got this. And then what I want to do, right? I want to leap to here. Now this is really interesting. One of the things that I'm doing on the internet this minute, and I've now been told to stop. That I've been doing erasing history, right? And and how you erase history is by removing it. And this is an example of that. I was going through the paperwork, and I'm really pleased that I found this image. It's a great image. And this was taken in 1988. I used to write on the backs of my photographs, 10th of August 1988, at the amphitheatre in Killeen, right? So what you would do, you'd go into Killeen, and there would be like a ticket office, and you would see these, which were, and it's a shame I haven't got the one in front as well, because I haven't got them all in the photograph, but it's just a shame. You wouldn't find you wouldn't find an image of this anywhere, right? Because they move them. And I don't. They probably moved them into the archives of the museum in Killeen, and will never ever be seen again. But in the past, the whole point, in the past, they used to trust public with archaeology, right? And there it is. People were able to go, oh, you know, look at that. You know, it's a sarcophagus, and then the ones further on, a sarcophagus for children, and it's like interactive archaeology. They move them, and now nobody will
Are
see
you
them.
sure they're not in the museum itself? Because it's sometimes the museum's closed, isn't it, when you go?
Yeah. No. So, somebody mentioned that last night, and I said, I've never seen these on display in the museum. They're going to be in the museum basement somewhere, right?
Yeah.
But obviously
Oh,
they're not on display, and that is the
no.
tragedy of this. You know, it really is a tragedy. And then the other image that we're going to look at links. So I found this, and I thought, right, these sarcophagi, these I can give a date for these. So these are going to be probably dating from about the late 300s, because people in the Roman world initially were being cremated, and then you got stone sarcophagi like this. So you know, this is why we know they're a bit later. The next image is this. Now, this is back on my theme of erasing history, or changing history, because this image itself is also from the 10th of August 1988. I must have a good old blast that day. And actually, the weird thing is that these I must have had two different cameras, because the mounting of these is different. Anyway, so anyway, point with this is that I found this as well, and this is again from 1988, and I prefer archaeology to look like this. When you go to Killeen now in the baths, they've got like interpretive panels actually on it, right? And it's sort of little things standing up indicating this is where the wall should be, and you know, there's light shining on it. And I'm thinking, no, I want to see this, you know. So unfortunately, what they're doing is they're forcing us to see archaeology, and archaeology is interpreted in the way that they want us to see archaeology. Back to that trip that we made to Stonehenge. Were you on that trip to Stonehenge, Anne?
No.
I don't know if Pat was there, but we had a full coach, and there was like yeah, it was full, right? And I remember it was like I was the guide this day. Well, actually, it was our group. So we went into Stonehenge, and the member of staff come up to me and said, right, we've got to shadow you to make sure you don't say anything that is not acceptable.
Oh yeah. I
So
heard about it, yeah.
yeah, so and the same thing happened when we had a trip to Bath as well. That was really odd.
Mm.
It's the second time this has happened. And one was an English heritage site and Heritage England, which is Stonehenge. And then the other site that we went to was actually run by Bath City Council, and that was the baths at Bath, right? And
Oh,
I think
mm.
it's very upsetting that you're not allowed to talk about this history in a way that is open to interpretation, not
Mm.
what they want you to look at. And I was going through a load of old paperwork, which I was going through a load of old images, which I was just shelving. And the lots of the images were to do with when we actually had the magazine that your daughter was involved with, an Archaeology World Report. And I thought for years I'm gonna launch an archaeology magazine that is going to be. This was in 2002. I was going to
Mm.
launch an archaeology magazine that's going to look at the archaeology of the world, and I thought that's great. So we advertised it. We got people to sort of write stuff for it. We had really good artists to do work in there. This is not one that the artist did. This was from a later edition, right? And I thought, wow. So we had loads of people interested, and then the week before we launched, Current Archaeology launched their World Archaeology magazine, and overnight we lost our entire subscriber base.
Yeah. Oh,
So yeah, it was it threw me a lot, that did.
yeah.
But this is I as I said last night, if anyone wants this image and they want to make a donation to Adva Hannes Cymru, I will send it to you, the original. This is actually from a later edition of Archaeology World Report. We only ran through about 3 editions, and then we closed. So that was it. If anyone's interested, let me know in the break. Add a donation to Adva Hannes Cymru. It's yours. Right. Oh, yeah, but there's a point to this. There's a point. When we looked at Herculaneum and some of the wonderful images that Henry had taken these images of similar scale, these marble troughs, right? And some of those marble troughs were obviously for horses to drink out of. Others were sort of fountain troughs that water would come out, get fresh water. Others were troughs that you would just urinate in, and that would be used in laundry houses. Obviously, this woman is actually filling a bottle, which is great. But the point is with this is that I thought this is a nice little illustration that we actually did publish in one of the editions of Archaeology World Report. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to a place of the world which people very, very rarely talk about. And I can get very excited about this because I saw a very, very rare exhibition in York, which was looking at the Scythian world. Now, one of the things that I is coming across by a few people is that it's good that we're looking at the background of the Roman world before we even look at the Roman world, so we can understand the Roman world. I was actually talking to somebody on an acting set last week who was actually, I think, a history graduate in university, and he said, "Oh, wow, that's a really good way of looking at the Roman world before you actually look at the Roman world." So these are Scythians, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you. We're going to go online as we did last night, and what we typed in, and this'll tell you about the exhibition in a moment. So Scythian gold, bingo. Now these people, right, produced some of the finest gold work that humanity has ever seen. It is absolutely unbelievable. Right, hang on. We'll reduce that one. Get there. look at that there, and it's the gold, the detail in that is yes, just unbelievable. And get this one up. Hang on there. Hang on, why is it not let me set it on the screen? Go. Don't know why it's not letting me do it. Got new technology next week as well. Now, in about 1987, I went with Knob End, my granddad, to York, right? And my mum basically said, "Look, Noah, Knob End." And that's what we used to call him. My granddad absolutely loved him to bits. I talk about him a lot, right? Noah took us to York, right? Took me to York, and my mum basically said, "Look, Noah, he's doing my head in, right? I.e., me. He's talking about history and archaeology all the time. Just take him to York, right?" So, so we went to York, and we basically my granddad did his own thing, and I did my own thing. I don't know what the hell he was doing, but he was just wandering about, and so was I. And I went to an exhibition which was looking at which was basically Russian holograms, right? And what the Russian government had done at the time was had this gold from Crimea, right? Which was part of Russia then, as it is now, and this gold from Crimea was instead of bringing the gold to Britain, they would make hologram images of it. And I tell you what, this exhibition was amazing. Like so you would so it was like things were in file things were like in display cabinets, but they were holograms, and you could look at these things from all the angles, and you could see the beauty of these objects, and it was absolutely without the gold leaving the Crimea, which is great. So this was great stuff. Now, what we know, I wanted to look at the Scythians because they tell us a lot about a people that came across Rome later on. They were called the Sarmatians, and then the Sarmatians who were supporting the Dacians and the Thracians against Rome. But one of the key aspects about these people is they had a lot of gold. They were great goldsmiths. And even though history says that they were nomads, they were settlers. And these people on horses would be people that would threaten the West for many generations. They would spur, for example, the Huns. They would spur, for example, the Goths and Visigoths and so on. All these waves of horsemen, and then you got the Tartars and all these different people. So they're extremely significant, and looking for example at that. Look at the absolute wonderful gold work in that. It's fine gold, and what we've got there. We've got some semi-precious turquoise stones in there as well, and the gold work is amazing. And again, seeing those holograms was something really, really special. So what we're going to do is, do you know what? I've got boxes and boxes of paperwork that I've just got to go through, and I've just got to get rid of loads of it. And I'm just thinking I've got to make choices. So the stuff that I've got, the stuff that I've got left is going to be a matter that I can use all this, and like I'm using it now, So that knowledge and photographs, which some I've shown you earlier on. Anyway, the Scythians had a lot in common with everything that's going on in Europe. It's sort of between Europe, isn't it? And it's between Asia. It's sort of that transitional area. But when we think about these people, the Scythians, their influences are coming from Iran. They're coming from the Hindu Kush. They're coming from the Indus Valley. There lots of influences, and probably influences as far away as the Mongols, right? So this was this you were talking about a world that's starting to evolve. It says 600 years BC there, but it evolves as far back as about 800 years BC, and they're a group of people that are moving across the steppes. We refer to it as the steppes. That endless land of frozen nonsense, but the steppes of Crimea and that landscape. And the Scythians, even though they're referred to as a nomadic people, founded a nomadic but sometimes settled, rich, powerful empire that eventually they would be sort of they would spur out the Sarmatians roughly, and then it would be this sort of sense of their cavalry and their archers and their deep influence on history. And like a link with our other presentations, there's a historian that comes into play, Herodotus. Herodotus tells us most of what we know about the Sarmatians up until modern research and excavation work. So that's one of the things. Now, I refer to Herodotus as one of those people that if Herodotus had never Herodotus lived. If all the work from Herodotus had been destroyed, right, like most works from most people in the past have been destroyed, right? What would we know about the Scythians? Like, what would we know about the Thracians? Herodotus wrote about them as well. So, and again, it's that fitting point, Anne, right? If Plato had never written about Atlantis and his works hadn't survived, then Atlantis would never have happened. That's a really weird concept. It really, really is, right? I'm not saying Atlantis is a fake event, but if nobody told us that Atlantis once existed, then nobody'd know it existed in the first place. So this is all really interesting stuff, So the Greek historian Herodotus visited, fairly peaceful landscape. So he visited this landscape roughly, earlier 400s. So when I say the earlier 400s, right, we're talking about it's the other way around. So the 490s, that's the earlier bit, and the later bit is the 410s. Whatever, work that one out. But it's because it's the other way around, BC. So what we now know is that we know a lot more about the Scythians now, is because the Russian archaeologists have been doing a great job of excavating lots of this. So the Scythians were feared and admired for their prowess in war and their horsemanship. So there we go. I think that's a great image. It's like thinking it doesn't make sense, but this is the Scythians. They look so. They don't look. They don't look from over 2,000 years ago. They just really don't. So they were among the earliest people to master the art of riding, and their mobility astonished their neighbors. The one point about that is that when we look at the Przewalski horses and we think about the movement of horses, it's just a bit of a weird story about horses. And the weird story about horses is the first thing that we did with horses was milk them. We milked them like cows. Because they were small animals, but eventually they could become bigger, so they could be used as draft animals for ploughing. And then somebody said, "Oh, look at that! You can jump on the back, woohoo!" And so, Michelle told me not to mention this. It's the same as me jumping on the backs of one of my sheep, right? No, not for that reason. I got some really big sheep, and you're thinking, well, if these sheep developed, you could ride them, as some people ride goats. So the point is that you wouldn't think about riding a goat, but you can, right? If they're a big goat, that is. The whole point is that horses were not ridden to begin with. So these Scythians, and when you think about it, their cultural influences, and also I think this is from a book. I don't know. Oh, come on, Henry, go along with me on this one. Henry probably played soldiers and when he was young and stuff, and he may have got books called Osprey books, and he would have used those Osprey books to paint the soldiers that he's using, right? These are from books, Osprey books. They're really well researched, right? And they tell us about the Scythians. The migration of Scythians into the territory, for example, so we go back to the Crimea, into the territory of the Crimea and all that brown stuff, into the area of the Cimmerians. There we go. And they basically controlled the Caucasoid area, and the Scythians overtook the Cimmerians and become very powerful. And this is when you look at these empires, you think, well, my God, how can they have existed? Because they actually stretched all the way from Europe. There you go, all the way from sort of Romania, Bulgaria, all the way from there, all the way through to modern day Russia, Crimea, and all the way into the likes of the Caucasus. And guess what? Their empire stretched all the way to sort of like the Tigris and the Euphrates, the area of Baghdad, went all the way down in through to Syria, right? The likes of Jordan, and all the way into the foothills of Egypt. It was huge. But who mentions the Scythians today? And they actually control bits of Anatolia, Turkey, and that's where we're going to go to after the break. Actually, when we talk about another group of people. There we go. So the Scythians were remarkable not only for their fighting ability, but also for the complex culture they produced. So obviously the clothing, how these people were, they were very different than things that were going on. So contemporary, when they're starting to become sort of really much identifying in their own right by around the the 300s and so on, right? They're really starting to get this huge, massive sense of identity. This is when Rome is developing. This is when Carthage is fighting Rome. This is when the Phoenicians are still out sailing about. This is all contemporary, but these people are doing their own thing. They really are. And obviously they would be coming into trade routes that included turquoise, gold, amber, and all these different things, and silks and all these other things coming from various different lands. And obviously further north, obviously getting the amber and stuff. So it's all great. So the Scythian world itself was powerful enough to deal with a big invasion of Darius I, the great Persian king, back in 513 BC. And the way they operated was a big sovereign family, like the British royal family. And obviously the one who takes over is his son and that type of thing. But so eventually, about the time of Herodotus, the royal family intermarried with the Greeks. So they were massively they had a massive relationship with the Greeks, right? And I think this is great. I think this next point is great, right? I had to read this twice when I did it yesterday. The greatest leader of the Scythians was a guy by the name of Aetius, right? And he got to the ripe old age of 90 in the year 339 BC. So when people say people in the past only lived into their 30s, they're talking codswallop, right? So this Aetius, right, in 339, can you guess how he died? Go on, Anne, give it a guess.
No idea.
He died on the back of a horse, right, leading his armies to fight Philip II of Macedonia, the father of Alexander the Great.
Oh my God.
You can't make that up. That's a film in itself. Do you know what I mean? You just cannot make that up. That's why he died, because he was killed fighting.
Yeah.
You know what they say. Don't retire. He definitely didn't. So the community was eventually what happens is sometime in the 150s, sometime around there, the Scythians start to go out of history with their last leader, Palacus. And it's a strange army that they've got. It's a really strange army, and I was only meant to be just doing a sort of an overview of this today, but you know, it's one of those things. So the Scythian army was was different than, say, the Roman army. Now, and obviously the Romans would have been well aware of these people, but they wouldn't have sort of had massive contact with them yet, because you know they're obviously starting to go out of history about the 150s, and they got the Sarmatians, and then the Romans eventually come across the Sarmatians because they're helping the Thracians, because the Sarmatians have sort of got sort of wonderful chainmail, and the cavalrymen obviously devolved from these Scythians. Scythian army was made up of freed men who didn't receive a wage, except they were given food and clothing. Except, right? This is the so whereas the Carthaginians wouldn't really pay their troops, and their loyalty of their troops wasn't great, you know, and they were known not to pay their troops, the Carthaginians. The Scythian didn't pay their army except when you'd collected the head of an enemy, right? So when you brought a head of an enemy, you were given a bounty for the head of the enemy, and therefore you paid a wage. So I'm not sure I'm not sure if you've got 100 heads, you're going to be paid for 100 heads. Okay, so I think that's a bit greedy, right? But you get the take, right? So obviously you've got the head of an enemy, and then you get booty for it. So many warriors wore Greek chain bronze helmets, and it's basically typically we saw that in one of the gold sort of things. So usually with chainmail, and sort of this is sort of the square sort of plated chainmail, but obviously normal chainmail as you'd find in the medieval period. So their principal weapon was a double curved bow. Okay, so that's what we're looking at, double curved bow in the image. And trefoil arrows. Now the trefoil arrows are really interesting. They're the bodkin, obviously the metal bit of the arrow. So you've got the bodkin, you've got the shaft, and you've got fletchings. Right. So the head itself is the bodkin had 3 barbs to it, right? So that is really crucial. So as these 3 barbs, right, and the bodkin with the arrow flying through the air, right, it goes into it cuts into you like a drill, right? It just you know, and these 3 barbs would just cut through you like a drill and come out the other end, right? And you'd probably be dead after that. So it's like a drill going through you. I've actually drilled through my foot by accident, and it's very painful. Don't ask, Anne. Yeah. I had this faulty drill, right? And I dropped it. It went through my foot, right? And it continued to go around because the safety mechanism wasn't working.
So you knew how it was. You knew how it felt to be speared.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I knew it.
Oh.
Mind you, the drill bit wasn't exactly massively wide, so it didn't do a massive amount of damage. You know, the worst thing to step on, right, is bloody Lego. Oh my God, that is some of the most painful stuff ever, right? Anyway,
Yeah.
I know I'm there. So every Scythian had at least one personal mount, but the wealthy owned large herds of horses, and this is the point in my notes. These actually look very Mongolian, except they prized, wait for it, Mongolian ponies. So if anyone ever turns around and says, oh, you know, it wasn't very cosmopolitan and people didn't move around much in the past, they're talking rubbish, right? In fact, you probably wouldn't be able to get hold of a Mongolian pony because of all the customs today. You wouldn't get one in this country anyway.
Yeah.
But burial customs were elaborate and called for the sacrifice of members of the dead man's household. This is the problem.
Ooh.
This is the problem in Scythian world, including wife, servants, and a number of horses. So when we see them, basically you've got these massive chambers, right? And they're usually full of people who are sacrificed, right? You know, if I think this is needs to be somebody important. It can't be sort of everybody, you know. So it's got to be somebody important. So you can imagine, the wife is having a conversation with her mate. Do you know what? Right, he's not very well. Well, you're gonna have to leave then. Yeah, I'm off. So she goes off, right, with the servants and the horses, and then he dies alone. So, despite these characteristics, there are many and exquisite grave goods, notably the animal style gold artifacts, which we'll come to at the end before the break, again reveal that the Scythians were also culturally advanced. Further, some gold ornaments thought to have been created by Greeks for the Scythians were shown to have predated their contact with Greek civilization. So, in other words, at one stage, people were saying, oh, there's no way that these Scythians could have created these things, but no, they did. They did. They did. This is how you invent history and get things wrong. So basically, what we've got here, you know, look at that horse there, and you're just thinking, this is so fine. And look at that there, and look at the realism in that. It's just like you're not going to get this in. You're not going to get this in the medieval period. You know what I mean? It's just so amazing, this stuff. Hang on, let's just try and get another image. Oh, look
Well,
at look.
they're just more sophisticated altogether, I think. You know, they were in advance, you know, they were advanced in Europe.
Yes.
They were more advanced than us.
Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to crack on this National Geographic article because I think they're all in this. So we'll just look at that there.
Yeah.
Do you know, it's look at the detail there, and it's just so fine, and there in context, you know, sort of Rasputin-y type figure. So it's just the world that we've totally lost, and we're not. And then just one more image. This is the one that I really get a lot out of, you know, because it's just so detailed, and that helmet there is very Greek looking because they some of them had these helmets. And basically, you've got these wicker shields, but they don't have stirrups. But look at the detail in the leg there. It's even got indications of the stitching on it, and this is in gold. This is amazing stuff. And there's a quiver on the leg there, so the quiver would be attached to the leg. So
yeah,
I think that's unbelievable. And that horse there, look at the muscles and the sinews and everything, and look at the detail on that guy's trousers. It's amazing. But this is and this is naturally going to be for a woman, isn't it? So that's one of her hair sort of pieces, you know.
Yeah.
So what we'll do, we'll have a break now, and I'm gonna have something to eat, and Anne's gonna tell us about her love life, and that should be good. Right, talking about love lives, Anne.
I'm gonna have a cup of coffee.
Good. Well, all right then. If that's all you're gonna say, let's move on, Pat.
Yeah, I'm gonna have some coffee too. Oh, the sticky bun.
Oh, I can have a donut. Well done. Well done.
Right. And
Well
I'm
done.
not gonna have anything to eat. I'll just have a coffee.
Anne, did you give me this cross?
No, I don't
Oh,
think.
good.
I'm not that religious. Oh, well, I mean, no, I can't.
Hey.
The only thing, yeah, go on then. The only thing I
Jesus
can
loves you, Anne.
remember was going to Pyle, and the vicar was there, Pyle Church, and we were doing a little, you know, we had archaeology Cymru display sort of thing, and I did pick something up from there, but I don't know what it was. I can't remember.
Oh, don't worry about it, Anne. We'll move on.
Oh.
Right. Okay then. Right. Enos, Richard.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, go on.
very interesting.
Yeah.
they are pretty amazing, you know, they are. Yeah.
Bit of a different subject.
Yes, thank you.
Different
It's
area, anyway.
different area, and the next one's going to be even something different as well. So, anyway, thanks for that, Richard. Henry, we'll have a 15-minute break. And don't get as graphic as last night when they were talking about sex and Roger's night with the prostitutes. Anything you want to say, Henry?
I thought that was really interesting. Pleased you brought that subject to us.
Yeah,
And,
good.
and I appreciate you saying that because there's so much we can do. It's just that it's I'm so pleased I'm doing this way because it's almost as if everybody's got they can create their own mind and understanding of the Roman world as it goes through, instead of me just saying, oh, this is the way, and then and it's not the way. So cool. Thank you very much for that, all of you, and we'll take a break.
Okay.
Right, catch you
Okay.
later.
Catch you
15
later.
minutes, folks.
Okay.
15 minutes. Oh my God.
And enough time to wash your knickers.
Oh, well, I will go make a cup of coffee. Are you going to have a cup of coffee?
Yeah.
What's her name in?
That's
Diane?
just gone to get one.
Oh, right. No, I go in. I can't get down low anymore. It's too low, the chair. Oh.
Anime. Da, 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 da. Be able to do something with these bloody things. What of that, man? People slagging me off. Oh, wow.
Telling me they've been bullied and intimidated by senior managers, telling them not to post on my social media. Staff have told me this has been going on for years. It's the first time that I've got evidence in writing, in a letter which I'll publish part of. It's unacceptable to me that members of staff feel intimidated by senior managers. Unacceptable for me that just by posting on my social media, staff are letting themselves in for trouble. I want a meeting with the chief executive, I want a meeting with the chief legal officer, I want it minuted, and It's going to be interesting. I've got a few things to say. Jochen Bell. Things to say. Jochen Bell. Things to say. Jochen Bell. I said London. I think maybe both of them were trying to catch me. Both of them were trying to catch me out. Crisps are looking really. That's Goodbye, children. Did they mean it? They, shoot one around.
No more scrambling when a button pops off or a seam rips. This 34-piece sewing kit that's everything you need right at your fingertips. Quick fixes anytime, anywhere. Everything has its spot with smart compartments.
Mm. 1 minute. So far. I don't know where everybody is. Give them a minute.
Here I am.
They're still making their coffee. Well, Pat's there.
Yeah.
When are you going on the Orient Express again?
I don't know. Haven't been on it yet. We're thinking we did the Outer Hebrides. So we did Lewis and Harris, and Skye, and the
You did that trip down the Rhine.
yeah, I did it down the Rhine from Val to Amsterdam, and then there was a trip to the Dead Sea. I think it's Budapest to the Dead Sea. It's all on Romans.
Budapest to the Dead. Right. Was that on the
Yeah.
train?
No, that's the Danube. You take the Danube,
Oh.
yeah, to the Dead Sea. And there was a bit of kerfuffle going on with drones and all near Ukraine. So we had to turn right and head down to Corinthium. I
Well,
think it's Corinthium. It's a city on the Dead Sea. And it was a lovely, lovely museum of Roman stuff. That was good. But the best Roman stuff I ever saw was in Lisbon, and it was all gold. And it was in a special room, and it was Roman.
Lisbon in Portugal, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They
Well,
wouldn't let you take pictures. You couldn't take pictures there. And I forgot to buy postcards, so
yeah, some of the postcards, like you know, the one I showed you
Yeah, they're
today of
very
Rome,
good,
that
yeah.
was brilliant. Yeah, that was that was
yeah.
brilliant. Right, let's crack on.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm doing with postcards that I'm finding? I had I found 3 of these in a box. Right, they were of Worth Church in Crawley. Right,
Yeah.
and I thought, right, I'll send these to people. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
I still got people that I send postcards to. So if you ever get a
Yeah.
postcard, then it's probably going to be from me. So let's crack on. Let's Anne's there. There she is. Right, come on, Anne. Let's get on with it. Right, so share. Okay, so well, we're basically halfway, or actually a little bit more than halfway. However, today we're going to be looking at the Lycians, right? Not the Lydians, but the Lycians. Now, again, this is one of those civilizations that puts a punch into understanding why we're looking at all these other bits of the world before we look at the Roman invasion of Britain. Now, this is a rather interesting little piece because I was doing my little research for this, and I found an article written by a reporter at the BBC called Alistair Gill, who published this on the 17th of September 2025. So you can't get more recent than this, even if I got a magazine from wherever. So there's 2 points in what I'm about to say. The ancient civilization that inspired US democracy, 1, and this is so different from the Roman world, even though it became part of the Roman world. There's the 2 points. Now, there it is in sort of the old world of Anatolia, sort of Turkey. And what they are doing in Turkey is they're trying to open up their tourist ability more. And what they've done with the Lycians is create a route that you can actually visit lots of the cities that were once part of the Lycian world. They've got like a little trail, except Pat, I don't think you and I could handle a 540-kilometer trail by foot. I think I think maybe 30 kilometers would be fine for me, but not 540 kilometers. So what they've done this route going around all of the Lycia, and in fact, there's loads of it. You know, there's loads of rivers to cross, there's lakes, you know, there's loads of places to ancient Lycia. And the one thing about Lycia, well, not one thing, it's different from the Roman Empire simply because they're not empire building. It's different from the Roman Empire because they've got a form of democracy that inspired the establishment of the Constitution in 1787 in the United States of America. So this is like an ancient maritime republic. It's like the Phoenicians, it's like the Carthaginians, it's like all of those people that had like a trading world. Even the Egyptians were a trading nation as well, you know, out to sea. Who were they? What we see from the Lycians is a little gesture of their world, because they were eventually taken over by the Romans. And what we do have is some nice images with a little bit of context. So this is that path that they've set up to look at all the Lycian world. Now, in the pandemic, I looked at a Lycian city. It only been recently sort of found, and it was up in the gods. And like most Lycian cities are up in the gods, and it was such an isolated city that they found that after the Romans had taken over the Lycian kingdom, the republic, they didn't find the city. So it's a bit like Machu Picchu in regards to the Inca. The Spanish never found that either. So looking around the Lycian world, what we see in this piece is this. So this is part of that sort of trail that they're setting up. This is called Semina Castle. And up around Semina Castle are these tombs that look very much like wooden temples of the Greek world. And that's what they're meant to look like. So the castle above, Semina Castle, and you've got these tombs. So as you go further down the hill, the tombs get less elaborate for the less rich people in society. Now, apparently these tombs are so heavy that it would take 5 men just to sort of wiggle the top of it. Lots of them have been broken into. Well, most of them have been broken into, but they're carved out of sort of solid, big chunks of rock that have been moved around. The sarcophagi at this fortress at Semina. And interesting enough, one of our people last night, Andy, said that he had visited lots of these sites, and sometimes it's good to make mistakes, because one of the people asked a question at the end. They said, "How many of these tombs are there?" And I said, "There's loads of them." And then Andy said, "Actually, there's not that many." And I thought, okay, I've made a mistake. That allowed us to discuss the world a little bit more. So this trail that they've got is 540 kilometers. Approximately take you 30 days to visit all of these sites. But along the way, you visit the Lycian world. They really want to bring this sort of world alive, with people sort of offering you different sort of things along the route. There you go. These tombs are at a place known as Yanthos, which is in fact a little bit like the London of Britain in a way, because all these little cities that made up the Lycian kingdom, right? This was the place that the big leader was at. A very, very Gothic looking, these things. And if you're lucky enough to go to the British Museum, you see this. And that's a really close-up version. You get to see that. Now, when I mention we're not going to mention Herodotus for a little bit, but this kingdom is mentioned, immortalized by Homer in the Iliad, right? It's mentioned in the Iliad. So, you know, this is amazing, isn't it? Homer's Iliad, it's just sort of mentioned there, right? And the city of Yanthos is mentioned because in Homer's Iliad it mentioned the swirling river of Yanthos, and this is the city of Yanthos. So we know about it. It's the great capital city. Look at that, though. Isn't that absolutely unbelievable? And when you're looking, that's in the British Museum.
What is
It's
it?
one of the British Museum.
I know it's a tomb, is it? Or just
Yeah, it's a tomb. It's
Oh.
a tomb, but it's like built like a temple. So it's right. Okay, Anne.
Mausoleum, more like.
Yeah. When we talk about, you can get about 6 people in there or something, whatever. But when we talk about the Etruscans, we talk these people, right? These people are basically getting into their own at the same time the Etruscans are getting into their own, like the 300s, right? And they really kick off by about into about the 190s BC. However, there's a parallel between the Etruscans and these people because they build their tombs as if they're building their houses and as if they're building temples. And I think one of the translation this would be like a wooden temple because those beams there sticking out are wooden beams, not stone beams, except this is carved in stone. Right. So basically they're replicating the wooden buildings in stone to immortalize their sense of presence within their society. These Lycians are a highly, fiercely independent seafaring people. Then we mention Herodotus. Herodotus tells us a little bit about these Lycians. So obviously, there we go, back into the early 400s. Herodotus is basically claiming that the Lycians, or those that created the Lycian kingdom, sprang originally from Crete. Now that's interesting because it could be that Herodotus is getting an old story from the collapse of the Minoan civilization. In fact, 1,200 years before Herodotus. Amazing, that, isn't it? 1,200 years before Herodotus is the Minoan civilization, right? It's quite incredible even saying that. So the Minoan civilization was 1,000 years older than Herodotus, 1,200. So is it that that these, so if we could get some of the maps on, right? This is more fascinating than just giving it just sort of 40 minutes tonight, but again, can't do all these things, right? So I've just had some work spring up on the screen. So basically, modern scholars, looking at these people, examine the link between the Lycians and Alexander the Great. So the Lycians are like there, and north of here is the Persians, and Alexander the Great goes against Darius and defeats Darius. So Alexander the Great is marching through this Lycian landscape and actually besieges some of the Lycian cities, but he doesn't actually capture all of them. So even the Lycian cities against the great Alexander the Great, they managed to hold out against Alexander the Great. So this is in 333 BC. So what we're then seeing is that moving forward in time, by about the time of the Byzantines into the 500s, the Lycians completely disappear from history, but they don't. And why we're saying that's a bit contradictory, isn't it? That's a little bit of an image of the one in the British Museum. They disappear from history, but they don't. What the hell do I mean? In June 1787, future US President James Madison gave a speech at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, well before DC. So the forum had been convened to identify a more effective system of government for the fledgling nation, where a lack of proportional representation was hampering effective policy making. So in other words, all these guys from Wales and Ireland and England and a couple from Germany and a couple from Scotland. They're all sat around the table and basically, oh, this is not democratic. We got to do something, right? One of the delegates at that meeting, a certain Oliver Ellsworth, said that they should base the American Constitution or the American setup on a civilization that disappeared from history, the Lycians.
Oh.
They looked to the Lycian world and the laws of the Lycians to establish the Constitution of the United States of America. And this was in 1787. Obviously, hopefully Pat knows all this, but if he doesn't,
No.
a bonus tonight. You didn't? Did you know this?
No, nothing. No.
Well, bloody hell, you're learning something about your own history.
Yeah.
So the Lycian League, the Lycian people, with all of these things, and you can just think that they're so unusual. These things, they do look like weird sort of towery houses, but the burial chambers.
That looks like the Newport Civic Centre.
And I knew, yeah, no, that does look like the Newport Civic Centre tower. You are right. I thought it reminded me of something, and maybe when you've got to look, and you've got to look this up. You've got to look to see if the architect was inspired by the Lycians. You've got to.
Yeah,
That's your homework, because you mentioned it, but you're right. So the Lycian League was argued by Oliver Ellsworth and Madison that it should be seen as an example for the establishment of the Union of the United States of America. So now the huge thing about all of this, and you've paintings and all sorts of things, right? And there's so much more to this world that I don't give it credit tonight, to be honest. So the Lycians themselves created this type of stuff. And when I saw this image, I thought, oh my God, that looks like the Nabateans, but it's not. The Lycians did this. And it's basically, they're cutting into the rock faces to represent some of the houses that they're living in. Yeah, but they're timber houses that they're living in, but they're carving them in stone. So there were 23 city-states. So the American Constitution based the fact that if you look at obviously back in 1787, there weren't 50 states. There weren't going to be 50 states for well over 115 years or whatever, with the introduction of Hawaii and whatever. So, but the point is that what they said, look, the Lycians are miniature city states with like an area of land around them, right? Which would then, if you think about them, that representing each state in America with a central city, right? Then they started thinking, right, each of those states sent representatives to Yanthos, which was their main city, to obviously. So now this is a bit of a play on words, right? I love the American Civil War, right? So when you're reading this, the Lycian League was the world's first democratic union, a model of a strong confederacy. And Pat knows what I'm talking about there. So the word confederacy is basically a group of people organized, operating their own thing, but they come together in times of trouble, right? Which is basically the same as the union, but don't go there. So based on popular and proportional representation, 2,300 years ago. Can you yeah? So
yeah.
So this is so the Lycian Council, right? The Lycian Council had a system of democratic representation, right? And also, without getting into complications, right? Some of the bigger cities had more representatives than the smaller cities, right? When you look at American politics today, you will know that that's what's called a number of college votes, right? So some states have more college votes than other states, right? So Florida has less college votes than, say, Georgia, right? So this is how, but they're basing this on the Lycian model, right? That certain areas which were bigger and more representatives, blah blah blah. So there you go. You're working that out. Hopefully, just get that over our heads, right? So when we go back to this, so then we kick in the Romans, because we've got to kick in the Romans. We've got to chuck them in there somewhere. Hang on, if I missed any images here. So we've got to kick in the Romans. So the Romans. Now this is really interesting. This is probably the first time we're going to get the we're going to get the following. So the circumstances surrounding the league's creation are uncertain, but it was probably a response to the tyranny of Rhodes. Now you wouldn't know it, but Rhodes was quite a big sort of trading power at this stage as well. And I mentioned Rhodes before. Before you go to the Acropolis of Lindos, I'm sure it's bloody Lindos. I keep getting this wrong. But at the bottom, you've got this beautiful stone carved boat, right, out of the rock, right? That's on Rhodes. So Rhodes, blah blah blah, sort of a little bit before that carving. But anyway, so basically, right, Rhodes and Rome were at loggerheads with the Lycians. Now Rome was only growing at this stage, but they had an ally in Rhodes. So the league itself basically held out against this Roman sort of world for a while, for over 150 years. So the league could not determine foreign policy, but elected a governing executive, judges, tax collectors, and all the rest of it. Now, there's a French philosopher known as Montesquieu, and Montesquieu, this French philosopher, wrote in the 1700s, the League of the Lycians is the most perfect constitution of antiquity, right? Now that's really, really important that that's being said, because usually when people think about the Lycians, they think about, oh, the Greeks were more democratic than anyone. No, they weren't. Although the Lycians based their ideas on the sense of Greek demos, where the word democracy comes from, the Greek idea of demos wasn't massively democratic, even though they voted with ballots made on bits of pottery and all the rest of it. But what the Lycians did, they took democracy further forward, and this was a community of individual urban settlements working together, as the United States does today, right? Usually, except don't go there, right? You get certain states in the United States agreeing with certain things, whatever. Yeah. So but unfortunately, Lycia eventually was 90% conquered by the Romans in the year AD 43. Under the command, well, not Claudius. Claudius couldn't have gone here, because why Claudius couldn't have gone here was because he was conquering Britain, supposedly. Yeah. So Claudius has sent his generals out to conquer this sort of landscape. So this is when people actually explore this landscape, right? As Andy said, he said it's really lush. It's really, really lush. And there's canyons, there's forest canyons, there's thyme scented groves, there's oak, there's wild olive, there's dogwood. It's a really weird landscape, apparently, Andy said. Now, again, with all of this, this whole landscape was being opened up to study in the 1950s. Obviously, by the 1950s, the Turks had gone through their stages of, development and so on. So in the 1950s, a writer known as Freya Stark wrote of this Lycian world, the most haunted coast in the world, because its empty tombs lie in every thicket and grove, like mute envoys sent down from a vanished embassy. That's a good way of looking at it. Ostentatiously, these are Yanthos, these pillar-like tombs at Yanthos, the capital of the Lycian world. So you could say that this is Washington DC, except a hell of a lot distance in time. Now there's another little story about this tomb. I don't know if this is the Elgin marbles of the Lycian world, but there's another story with this. So Yanthos's great pillar tomb, the tomb of Payava, with its bas reliefs, raised reliefs at the bottom there, was found and removed by British archaeologist Sir Charles Fellows in 1841. He had it placed on a ship known as the HMS Beacon, and the tomb still stands in the British Museum today, along with all its original, along with lots of other work that's in the room. These are, in other words, different. So what they did, the Lycians moved from these to creating these. So obviously these were being created in the earlier part of the 300s. So by the 200s, you've got those other tombs that are actually seeing, and that's the point. It describes these, and I'm going to read the description. So these ones, the rock-hewn house tombs, other than the freestanding ones, often funeral chambers carved into cliffs, with the rock face around the doorway cut to imitate the facade of a wooden Lycian house, which would have been very similar to Greek houses, which were wooden as well, complete with timbers and protruding joists, which would then eventually, this is what we're seeing with this type of thing. Now, there's a point to be made here that there is this idea in the Lycian world of literally elevating important people in death. So in other words, these tombs themselves were, instead of being a dictatorial bastard in life, you're a democratic person, but in death, you've got these tombs and they elevate you in death. It's a sense of becoming some kind of a hero in death within a pseudo land of demos, which is what the Greeks would say. While the ubiquitous tombs have given archaeologists an understanding of Lycians' elaborate burial rituals, the picture of everyday life is sparse. Finds of personal items or jewelry are incredibly rare. So what's happened to all this? The difficulty is that a lot of the hard evidence has been replaced by the Roman world. But the Romans didn't eradicate this culture. They just, and as I say, one city managed to hold out. There's so little from these periods surviving because all these tombs were looted. All the good stuff was taken away, and we're really not sure of their true identity. And this image here, as we're sort of getting to the end, this is Patara. Now, the ruins of Patara include lots of later Roman stuff, but it's likely that this was sort of pseudo, sort of Lycian. And this is a little bit of a nice story. So Patara was gradually abandoned after its river silted up. The colonnaded main street now disappeared into a pool, and the walls of the shops that once lined the avenue leading to this wonderful theatre are now collapsed. So you've got this. So you've got this is actually a theatre. This is actually a council chamber, right? And this is an auditorium. This is the meeting place of the leaders of Patara, one of the 23 individual states of the Yanthos Lycian kingdom. So you've got 20 rows of seats, benches, and this is basically the assembly house. So in other words, when you look at democracy around the world, it's based on this building. This is it. This is the start of democracy on the planet. Although this has been sort of more reconstructed now and so on, and it's probably a lot of Roman stuff. This is what we're basing this on. So this is known as the Bolterion. So sitting up high in the Bolterion, it wasn't hard to imagine hundreds of robed delegates discussing public affairs.
Yeah.
And obviously the proceedings continuing, and then your thoughts drift from Patara to distant Philadelphia, when Madison, the future president, was thinking about in 1787 the invocation the enshrinement, the re-emergence of the Lycean League, not in Europe or Asia, but in the United States. It is thanks to Madison that today the US House of Representatives is founded on the Lycean principle, with the 435 seats apportioned among the 50 states of the Union. Of all the Lyceans' attempts to defy the passage of time and preserve themselves for the next world, the one that turned out to have a true afterlife was the most intangible of things. This very idea that gave birth to the democratic country that is the United States today. And on that note, I think that's a good end, actually.
Yeah.
And again,
I suppose.
and again, one thing before we go, before you say anything, this building is enshrining the fact that we can contain our history and keep it with us, like this has been re-emerged in the United States in 1787. On that note, Anne, you may avail us of your thoughts.
Oh, is that where Lyceum comes from then? Lyceum. Like they're usually theatres, aren't they? But
Oh, the Lyceums.
yeah.
It's based on the enduring epicenter of this wonderful kingdom which
Yeah.
has offered us the Lycean dream, which, although the Lycean world is long since gone, it still continues. And so those tombs, in a way, those tombs themselves speak of immortalization, because those people buried in those tombs, or once were, are the same people that would be thinking, wow, we did something, and it's still with us today. So
What's it called now? What's the area called now? It's Turkey, is it?
yeah, it's Turkey. It is basically you've got oh God, it's
very
all
interesting
Anatolia.
country, really.
It's
Very
all Anatolia.
interesting
Yeah.
country, because I haven't been there, but I've got a friend who lives there, and she says about the valleys and the wooded hillsides and things, in parts of Turkey. That
The one thing about Turkey is it's a massive interchange between East and West, Asia and Europe, and it's going to be very difficult for any civilization to survive with that. But obviously, I'm going to say the Turks are very different people from any Muslim countries, and you can tell why they're different because they're influenced by all these cultures, unlike any other Muslim country on the planet. So you can hardly say that you can hardly say that Turkey is typically Islamic, because they got their president Erdogan, and it's very different. And with all of that said, I think all of that culture feeds into where Turkey is today, and including the Lycians. Obviously, I'm sure President Erdogan would basically turn around and say, actually, our sense of our world actually comes from the Lycians, and I'm sure he would be the first to say that because it's in his bloody country.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. I had absolutely no idea, like most things.
And if I ever win the lottery, right, we'll get a private plane, and we'll take you over there for a week.
All right then, very good.
We'll have Richard in the back there giving out the ice creams.
Well, at least you've been to Cyprus.
Quite a lot of times, yeah, exactly. So, okay, anything else, Anne?
No, that's very interesting. Always nice to have more information to look up.
My pleasure, always, Anne.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. Right, okay then. Anything from you, Richard?
Oh, interesting, different areas to look over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And maybe plan a big date with Pauline. It'll have to be more than a weekend, Richard.
Ah,
Yeah.
You haven't got any animals to look after, so you've got no reason to stay in Barry.
yeah, true enough.
I'm presuming you haven't got a cat or anything.
No, no.
Yeah.
Well, Richard, what are you
Got
waiting for? Get
goldfish.
on with it. What's that?
I've got goldfish.
A
Oh, bloody hell.
goldfish.
Mm.
Well, he
Oh,
can't go. He's got a responsibility. That's his way out.
yeah.
Um,
Over. Pass him on.
yeah, I've got to. Did you know I've been invited to do a talk to the Barry Yacht Club in December? So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, great.
They wanted a title. Because I'm going through all this paperwork now. I said, right, what about sinking in history? And they said that'll be fine.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
Actually, there's a play on that, sinking in history, because it's supposed to be a coastal thing, but then there's a lot of history, and that's what I thought that's great. So
yeah.
and maybe I can give one or two of the stories up from the book at that stage, because it'll be so far advanced that nothing's stopping us. So right, Pat, anything from you, darling? Pat,
No, it's fine. But interesting. I'm going to
Good.
share it with my friend on Saturday. Tell her all about it.
and so you bloody should. And don't forget, we also did the Scythians as well.
Yeah.
Well, Scythians, yeah, we have done them before. Yeah, I know. In fact, I
So-
was starting to think we went all the way from Iron Age or Stone Age to the Scythians. So, by the time we got to, where we were in the hall, and yeah.
Nice, cool. Okay. If there's nothing else from you, Pat, we'll ask Henry.
No, I haven't got anything. I thought that was just really enlightening and really useful. Thank you.
But I didn't
Good.
know about the Lycians. No, I didn't. Even though we did the Scythians before, we didn't do the Lycians, I don't think.
No, we did do a lecture on the Lycians in the pandemic, but it was about a city. It was about the ruins rather than the
Wow.
Lycians themselves. So yeah, it was about the city that held out against Rome when it was a Lycian city. So there we go.
Oh, right, okay.
So any other questions before we go?
No,
No?
No,
Okay.
nothing for me.
Okay, well, I'll call it a night, and I'm going to say good night to Richard. I'm going to say good night to Anne and Pat and Henry and anyone else who knows me. And we will see you all next Wednesday. Thank you very much. A shame Goff
Okay.
wasn't here. All right, then. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you,
Well-
guys. Night, night,
Good night.
Henry, Pat, Anne, Richard.
So
Night.
long.
So long. Night.
good night. Have a good
Night.
week.
I can have a donut.
Good enough. Yeah.
Night, Henry.
Leave.
Leave. Oh my! I tell you what, Henry. Right, you thought that was bizarre. On Tuesday was another planet. I just, I don't. It was everything that they were discussing was so. In the break, I had to say, "Look, guys, can you just? I got to crack on." It was that bad.
I might go and try. I might go and look for that one.
I thought Wednesday was chilled. No, Tuesday. I thought Tuesday was my chilled class. I thought, right, they're all sensible, but blimmin' hell, compared to you guys, they were on another planet.
Right. Well, enjoy yourself for the next couple of weeks. I've sent you a little message, so I won't be around. So
All right, shame about that. All right, then I'll see you soon.
yeah, it might involve that hat.
Yeah, I'll send it to you in the post.
I wouldn't. Not where I'm going.
Yeah. If it's Moldova, you wouldn't be very popular there either. They'll think you're a spy. That'll be it. That's you. You finished, mate.
Right. Let's look into that later. Right. Au revoir.
Au revoir, mon petit fleur. Ciao, Bella. Night. Take care.
Good night.
Night. Bye. That was a good one. You know what? I'm a bit tired now. I've got to make sure everybody's in bed, I think. And God, I've had a bit of hassle today, but over my sheep. But that's life. So anyway, I've got to get some Lucozade. I've got to travel back to South Wales now because I've got to. All the sheep are all locked up happily, so that's good. I'm gonna have a donut first. I've got to make sure everybody's there. Anyway, night. Diolch yn fawr i chi. Gwelwch chi eto nos da. Night. Look in the chat box. Nothing in the chat box. 1, 2, 3. Nothing in the chat box. 4, 5, 6. Nothing in the chat box. 7, 8, 9, 10. Nothing in the chat box there. Do. Nothing there. That's gone. That's empty. What's in there? Oh, there's no message there. And 7th one, done. Okay. Done. Amor o hyd, nos da chi.